Persona 5 Royal is a good game. It is also one of the most conflicting and overhyped games that I have ever played. I realize that that's a pretty bold statement to start this video out with, so let me explain. Hey, editing by Zaster here to point out that filming and script writing by Zaster is a dumbass because I made it sound like I was going to explain my main point in this segment, but I don't. I do that later in the video. So, just clarifying. Sorry. I was originally gonna make one of my usual reviews for the game where I summarize the story and make dumb jokes before moving on to the pros and cons and whatnot, but I have so much to say about this game that I would not be able to make a video like that without splitting it into multiple parts, something that I, 1, don't have the energy for because of how long the story is, and 2, don't want to do because there are so many other games in anime that I want to review. So instead, here's how the video will go. I'll talk about my background with the game, then move on to the pros and cons, then discuss other aspects of it and give it a final review score. Also, there will be spoilers. Persona 5 Royal dropped on the Switch just last year, and I, like many other filthy Switch users, had been anticipating a port of the game for so many years before that. Hell, I started begging for a port before the Royal version of the game was even released. I clearly remember looking at Persona 5 Switch at least once a week, up until it had gotten announced, just to see if it had gotten shadow dropped or even rumored. I would also later go on to discover, a few days into this process, that I had to specify my search a little because looking up Persona 5 Switch led to some unfortunate results. But then one day, this happened. Wait, holy shit, they're doing it. They are doing it. That's right, baby, this meant that Persona 5 fans could finally play the game. But while this eventual reveal was so rewarding after such a long wait, it also acted as sort of a double-edged sword for the game. You see, this wasn't just some random game that had finally gotten announced for the Switch after like a month or so of waiting. This was one of the most critically acclaimed games of the 2010s that we had waited years to be ported. So needless to say, I went into Persona 5 Royal with very high expectations. Expectations that weren't completely delivered upon. As you may have gleaned from the first spoken sentence of this video, I have a lot of criticisms about this game. However, don't forget that I also stated in the first sentence of this video that I think the game is good. I seriously do, so let's get into the positives first. And what better place to start than the start of the game? Look, I've played a lot of video games, a good percentage of which are other JRPGs, so I'm giving high praise to this game when I say that it has one of the best opening chapters of any video game ever. Let's dive into why that is. Persona 5 Royal doesn't fuck around with its opening chapter. The awesome, catchy opening theme that is slightly inferior to the opening in the first game, is paired with incredible, flashy animation that shows off just how fucking cool the game's art style is. After that, it takes no time grabbing you by the balls and thrusting you right into the action. You're given no time to think about the crazy, playable stealth sequence in a casino because minutes later, we're arrested and thrown into an interrogation room. It also doesn't take long to realize, oh shit, this game's structured pretty well. Even the usually immersion-breaking parts of JRPGs are implemented in such an insane way. For example, the game has you choose your name and difficulty while your main character is being drugged and getting the shit kicked out of him. And I feel like it was intentional. But hey, at least we can breathe a sigh of relief knowing that members of the law enforcement would never brutalize an unarmed teenager. Anyways, let's meet our main character, Joker, which, yes, I'm going to call him because if a Ren or Akira debate starts in the comments, I will kill myself, is a Japanese high school student who was expelled from his previous school and made to relocate to Shibuya because he committed the horrible crime of stopping a sexual assault incident from happening. This is where the story starts out. And oh yeah, Joker being in that interrogation room is actually a flash forward to events later in the game, and you switch back to that every once in a while. Personally, I found the use of flash forwards in the game to be extremely cool.
I look forward to your continued
Jesus Christ, what is it with this guy and getting drugged? God damn. Motherfucker! In concept at least, but we'll get to that later. Because I can't think of many other JRPGs that do that. Like, seriously, I can't. At this point, you're not even an hour into the game, But you already know that 1, it's stylish as hell, 2, it's drawn beautifully, and 3, there's underlying themes about corruption in its story, 4, there's mysterious shit going on, and 5, our main character's life is pretty fucking.
This is truly an unjust game.
But the game doesn't just have a fantastic intro. Like I said, its entire opening chapter is fantastic, and this is for so many reasons. First of all, the introductions to the fighting system, the palaces, Anin Ryuji, and so much more got me absolutely hooked on the game. But what shined the brightest for me was the introduction to Suguru Kamoshida, the villain of the game's first palace. And by the way, if you are sensitive to topics such as physical and sexual abuse and suicide, please skip to the timestamp displayed on screen. Kamoshida is the gym teacher and coach of multiple sports teams at the high school we go to, as well as a former Olympic gold medalist, and he uses these positions to his advantage in the most disgusting ways possible. His position as a former Olympic gold medalist brings the school fame and success in the athletic department, and both he and the school knows that they don't want to lose this. As a result, not only the school, but the parents of the students as well turn a blind eye when Kamoshida physically and verbally abuses his students. But it gets worse. We later find out that Kamoshida purposefully broke Ryuji, one of the main characters in the game, his leg, in order to get him off the track team. He views his female students as nothing but sex objects, and he's forcing On, another main character, to hook up with him in exchange for keeping her best friend Shiho on the volleyball team. The game does an incredible, and I seriously mean incredible, job of making you absolutely fucking despise Kamoshida. Every time you learn something about him, he becomes more and more appalling. And if you somehow didn't hate him yet, then first of all, what? And second of all, after On, for obvious reasons, refuses his demand to sleep with him, he ends up sexually assaulting Shiho. It gets worse. The next day at school, Shiho, luckily unsuccessfully, attempts suicide, traumatized after her experiences with Kamoshida. Not only was this the absolute breaking point for our characters, it was also my breaking point. At this point in the game, I wanted absolutely nothing more than to defeat this disgusting, corrupted, abusive, manipulative, ugly, dream-looking rapist. And that is exactly what makes Persona 5 Royal's first chapter so fucking incredible. You aren't defeating the villain, just because you have to do so you can advance through the game. You're defeating him because you want to see this pathetic excuse for a human being go down. And when he does, it's so rewarding. While we're on the subject of the game immediately drawing you in, let's talk about how fun the palaces, fighting system, and general gameplay are. Well, at first, but I'll get more into that in the cons section. The palaces are, unsurprisingly, very stylish and really cool to look at. They're also super fun to explore. I really liked how the game gave you the option of finishing it all in 1 or 2 in-game days, which I usually ended up doing, or completing it over the span of the in-game month-long time limit you had. Usually, I hate when games time you, Majora's Mask, but I pretty much didn't even notice the time limit because I was able to do things pretty efficiently. The combat system was also really fun. It's a turn-based system, which is very common for JRPGs, but it changes it up by allowing you to do all sorts of cool attacks and turn changes, especially in boss fights, most notably all-out attacks. While the exploration and combat mechanics were great, the non-action mechanics were also super engaging. I, for the most part, enjoyed leveling up my stats and confidants and just kinda exploring the non-action areas. The entire system just felt really fun. Until it wasn't, but more on that later. But you can't have a good game without good characters, and Persona 5 Royal occasionally has just that. If I had to list my favorite characters, I'd say On, Ryuji, Futaba, Sojiro, Kasumi, Makoto, and Sei. And you might be thinking, Disaster, doesn't that seem like way too many favorite characters? Probably, but these characters are genuinely that good. I cared so much about them, and even though On and Ryuji will always be my all-time favorites, I loved seeing the other characters too. Oh, wait, that, isn't what you were thinking? You were actually thinking Disaster? Did you seriously try to sneak Sei into that list? Look, she has good character development, and, look, have you guys ever heard of pegging?
That's unacceptable.
I cared so much about these characters, which is why it was so awesome to have the confidant system. I was emotionally invested in these character stories, and this was the a solid enough way to hear them. I shit you not, I literally reached rank 10 with Ryuji on June 4th, which is very early in the game. I love my silly himbo so fucking much. You also have the option to romance some of these confidants, and I chose An. It was a tie between her, Makoto, and Hifumi, but I ended up choosing An because I sorta liked her story more. An was such an incredibly written, strong female character, and her romance route was extremely sweet. And even if you didn't romance anyone, reaching rank 10 in general was just pretty satisfying. I could go on and on about my favorite aspects of the story and characters, like how the game usually does a great job of not falling into tropes or creating one-dimensional characters, but I will stop myself and move on to talking about the art and music in the game. First of all, the art. When I first got super interested in Persona 5, I didn't know jack shit about the story and characters. What interested me was how fucking stylish the game looked. The red color scheme, the absolute drip the characters wear, the cool-ass loading screens, environments, and pretty much everything made the game look so goddamn tasty. Persona 5 doesn't suffer from style over substance. It uses its art to get you interested, and then it adds on to the substance with its style. The art is constantly jaw-dropping, and guess what? It looks incredible on the Switch. Oh, Persona 5 won't run on the Switch, so it won't come to it. Suck my dick. Then you have the music, which, oh my god, it's so good. Even aside from wake up, get out there, so choose a color to live by. The music is practically great in any area you're in. The soundtrack is full of some awesome acid jazz and funk tracks, and oh shit, we're in a battle now. Bring out the electric guitars, baby, throw some fucking rock in there. All of these cool pieces are so goddamn memorable and fit perfectly with the game's incredible art style. The highlights of the soundtrack were the opening themes, Beneath the Mask, and You'll Never See a Comeback. Moving on, the new content added in Royal significantly improved upon the original game, and made it clear that it wasn't some lazy cash grab. Like, yeah, I may have never played the original, but I genuinely cannot imagine the game without these additions. The Royal version of the game added 2 new characters, Kasumi and Maruki, quality of life improvements, entirely new parts in the story, and even more. Kasumi is a fantastic character, really well written, and is super fun to play as, and Maruki is an even better written character and an incredibly written villain who was originally introduced as a side character. I'd go as far as to say that he's the best written villain in the entire game. How the fuck did the original game not have all of this? Because, oh yeah, the game adds on more after the base story. The best part? The original story combined with it still flows seamlessly. That's hard to do. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is my favorite game of all time, and the sequel story they tried to introduce in the definitive edition fits with the original game about as well as a dick in a pencil sharpener. But not this game. Maruki's Palace made Persona 5 interesting again, and I'd go as far as to say that it's the best one in the game. Adding him as the true final boss was the best decision they ever made. Also, fun fact, I played on normal difficulty during the whole game, but Maruki's fight was so hard that I had to switch to easy, so that's impressive for the game, but embarrassing as hell for me. Persona 5 has so many positives, and the Royal version just makes the game even better. All of the shit I've talked about so far is the exact shit that makes people say that it's one of the greatest video games of all time. Which is why it's so depressing that it also fumbled so many times. That's right, we're getting into the cons now. I cannot express this enough. I like Persona 5 Royal. I enjoyed the game, and I am a fan of it. But the amount of criticism I have about it is insane. Also, quick note, I get pretty harsh and ranty in this segment, so just please keep in mind that these are just my opinions, and if you disagree, that is chill. First of all, the game severely limits exploration by allowing you to only do 2 things a day. I genuinely cannot express the amount of fantastic elements in this game that they absolutely buttfuck with dumb shit like this. There is so much to do in Persona 5, and you have to make wise decisions on what to do and what not to do during each day. You could argue that it makes the game more realistic, and that does sort of make sense. But 2 things? When I get home from school, I don't eat a snack, exercise, and then pass out for 12 hours until I wake up the next day. Who the fuck does? Also, there is a talking cat in this game. What the fuck is realistic? This is the first of probably many times during this video where I'll compare this game to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which, by the way, I will make a video on at some point in the future. The monastery aspect of Three Houses is not perfect, but one thing I really liked about it was that the more shit you did well, the more time you got to spend doing activities. Why couldn't Persona 5 have had something like that? Oh, and by the way, about that talking cat I mentioned earlier, every time Morgana told me to go to sleep, my urge to lace his catnip with fentanyl became just larger and larger because the last thing this game needed was more limits. Alright, what else? Oh yeah, Mementos was probably the most unmotivating and boring area in the game. It feels more like a chore when it's supposed to add more fun action and exploration to the game. It somehow makes the awesome red color scheme look bland. Like, seriously, give me something else to look at. And it's way too grindy and repetitive and... Oh, what's that? My motivation to go there is to make my ungrateful bitchy cat happy? Fuck that. I wouldn't be complaining if they just made this optional, but the game eventually decides to lazily implement it into the main plotline to advance a story arc, so... But unfortunately, not even the palaces are safe from criticism. None of them ever got as boring as Mementos, but up until Sei's Palace, the ones following the first one got progressively lamer, more tedious, and less memorable. Futaba is one of my favorite characters in the game, but her palace made me want to bash my head into one of her stupid fucking pyramids. And don't even get me started on Okumura's palace because, oh my god, it is so long, so boring, and so fucking tedious. So much so, in fact, that it made me stop playing the fucking game for months. The fact that there was a palace that made me unmotivated enough to keep playing does not reflect well on the game. Speaking of boring, there were far too many characters that I didn't give half a shit about. Well, either that or I actively disliked them. Yusuke, aside from some weird shit with An that I'll get into later, had a relatively promising start to his story. Unfortunately, he happens to have the personality of a used condom. Nothing, and I mean nothing, that this character said or did throughout the entirety of the game was of any interest to me. Haru was also relatively interesting in the beginning, but then the writers forgot about her and turned her into Melia 2.0. Only this time, she talks like this, and it makes me want to kill myself. Also, that forehead! Now, for the characters I hated, Morgana and Akechi. I already discussed Morgana a little bit, but one of the other reasons I hate him is because he provides absolutely nothing of substance to the story and was completely useless aside from his healing abilities that I spammed. He's just there to be an annoying gimmick character that you're expected to give two shits about. I literally groaned when his fake-out death was, well, revealed to be fake. As for Akechi, okay, hate is a strong word, but this dude is so overhyped. After he's revealed to be a traitor, he's an okay character, but he's boring. Well, aside from his fruity-ass interactions with Joker and his delicious pancakes line. But once he's revealed to be the traitor, he starts to become slightly more interesting and a little terrifying, because, like, this fucking facial expression damn near made me piss myself when I was playing this game at 4 in the morning. But any interesting features he may have developed from this plot twist are quickly lost after you meet him again post-betrayal. He acts like a whiny edgelord 13-year-old who absolutely frequents Reddit and 4chan with lines like,
"Don't make me laugh! Justice! Righteous! Keep that shit to yourselves! You and your teammates piss me off!"
But people obsess over this dude so hard. I've seen people claim he's the best written video game villain of all time. Bitch, what? He's not even in the top 3 villains in this game. See, Maruki's a great villain because during his entire life, he's been fucked over and over again. He's lost everything, and now he has what he believes is a solution that he'll stop at nothing to achieve. That is cool. And what is Akechi? Oh, his daddy doesn't like him very much? Okay, I'm being kinda harsh. I don't even hate Akechi that much. I definitely didn't like him though, and you know what that means? Out of the 9 party members, excluding Joker and including Kasumi, I liked 5 of them. Sure, I'm not going to love every character, but I liked just barely over half of the main characters. That is not a good sign. Like, honestly, I would have killed Morgana in order to replace 2 of these ass clowns with Hifumi and Shiho as Phantom Thieves. But, let's move on. Ah, the silent protagonist. A very infamous trope in video games. For characters like Link and Mario, it works because they don't need to talk to advance the story and they take a backseat to the incredible aspects of their respective games. When it doesn't work is when your protagonist needs to, say things. Persona 5 Royal is a game that requires you to make choices, including, but not limited to, in dialogue. So it's a little stupid that your choices mean jack shit 95% of the time. You don't even have choices. You have a right and wrong answer disguised as choices. If you pick the right option, a different character will say what you thought you said. And if you pick the wrong one, oh, congratulations, you're a fucking dumbass. And then you end up doing the other thing anyways. Your choices sometimes matter in confidants though, so let's get into those. As I stated in the pros section of this video, I enjoyed the confidant system to an extent. But okay, unfortunately, I'm going to pair the game to Fire Emblem again. I'm sorry. One of the reasons I love Three Houses' support system so much is because it's fully voiced. I'm not saying all of Persona 5's had to be, but aside from the rank 10 conversations, you're forced to read shit. Hooray! Also, some of the confidants in the game were boring as fuck. That's fine, not all of them were going to be interesting, but guess what? You were required to do some of them, because in order to get the shit fart surprise 5000 ending, you had to play darts with Sketchy Akechi 600 goddamn times. Also, more on the endings later, because, oh my god. Another problem with the confidant system in the game was that, okay, sorry, I know I just did this, but I'm going to compare it to Three Houses again. In Three Houses, you can have support conversations with other characters. However, the characters can also have conversations with each other. In Persona 5, you can have conversations with other characters, but during the entire game, you rarely see the characters talk to each other on their own. I really wish that there were confidants between characters that, well, weren't you, because it would have allowed for more of a great character dynamics like An and Ryuji's, and it also would have allowed for actual character dynamics between other characters so they didn't feel like they were just there to talk to you. Also, let us romance Ryuji. The game absolutely could have benefited from male romance options, which obviously didn't happen due to reasons I'll get into in the next section. But what's that one line Ryuji had again? No, not that one. Yes, that one. How is that not gay? It genuinely feels like the team intended for him to be a male romance option. And then Katsura Hoshino came in and said no. And same with Akechi, honestly. And now let's move on to the more serious issue with the game. It's pretty problematic for a handful of reasons that I was originally going to talk about a lot, but the segment was way too long when I wrote it out and way too ranty, and I don't want this video to be rantier than it already is, so we're going to shorten it up a bit. The scene in the original game where Ryuji is hit on by stereotypical gay men who later drag him off while he tells them to stop, that's played for laughs and meant to reinforce the horrible and untrue stereotype that all gay men are underage boy molesters. The attempted fixed version of the scene, the royal version of the game, where the men hit on Ryuji and drag him off to dress him in drag against his will, because sure, don't remove the pointless scene, just add some transphobia to it. The constant, and I mean constant, objectification of An, the fucking dominatrix toddlers, and of course, the fact that the game won't let you date boys because, that's weird, but will let you date your adopted little sister as well as various adult women that are much older than our teenage main character. No, Persona 5 Royal is not the only thing I enjoy that features shit like this that I have to ignore in order to find enjoyment in it. But when some of the main themes of your entire game are to be yourself and combat hatred, turning around to feed hatred and go, well, some people shouldn't be themselves, makes it hard to take the game's themes seriously. Now, moving on to my last point, the ending of the game. Now, you can actually achieve multiple different endings, both good and bad, in this game through different choices that you make, and I chose to go for the true ending exclusive to the Royal version of the game. And wow, after all those 100 plus hours I plugged into the game, all the hard work I did to get to this ending, all the shit our protagonist went through, we finally got to, we got to leave all of our friends behind, and that's it. Alright. The thing about this ending that pisses me off the most is that it tries to disguise itself as a good one. It holds your dick and goes, wow, good job, you get to go back to your hometown that you probably forgot you originally lived in since you spent the entire game here. No one is happy about this, but hey, you'll keep in touch with everyone. Bitch, I don't care about that, let me fucking stay in Shibuya with them. Not all endings have to be good. Some can be sad, some can be left up to interpretation and are purposefully abstract and cryptic. Some are just bittersweet. This game just has an unsatisfying ass ending. You spend the entirety of the game working your sweaty ass off to bond with these characters, and you probably romanced one, or maybe all of them, only for the game to slap you in the face and make you abandon all of them for no reason and disguise it as some bittersweet ending. No, it's just angering, and it's the best possible ending that you can get. I like Persona 5 Royal. I enjoyed the game, I will proudly admit to that. But it is flawed. In my opinion, way too flawed to be considered one of the best games of the decade, much less the greatest JRPG of all time. I think that the main problem with this game is that it had so much promise. It 100% could have been one of the greatest JRPGs ever made, but it's weighed down by a lot of hiccups, whether it's the game getting boring a few too many times or, giving you the opportunity to date your sister. But despite having one too many ugly aspects, Persona 5 Royal is still a good game. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's stunning to look at, it features a sort of incredible cast of characters, and an incredible soundtrack. Sure, I could rant all day about the shitty parts of the game, but you know what else I could talk about all day? How much fun the incredible start of the game is, and how fucking goddamn amazing Sei's Palace is. The entirety of the extra content added in Royal, too. I think it's more than safe to say that Persona 5 Royal has gotten me hooked on this series and makes me want to play more of it. I'd personally give Persona 5 Royal a 7 out of 10. It took me a while to decide on a score for the game, because clearly there was a lot to consider when talking about it for me, but ultimately I think this score fits it. Yeah, the game is kinda overhyped, but you know what else it is? A good-ass game, and I'm proud to say I'm a fan of it. And by the way, even if you disagreed with what I said in this video, I hope you still enjoyed it and maybe even had a few laughs along the way. Also, feel free to comment your own takes down below, I will probably reply to it. Plus, last thing, I promise, deciding on a score for this game was not the only thing that took a while, so was the entire process for making the video. I wrote about 3 entire-ass scripts, scrapped them, wrote this entire-ass script, and then filmed and edited this entire video. So if you'd at least consider subscribing, then please do. It helps me out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully.